Welcome back to our study in the letters Paul wrote to Timothy. We're in the first chapter of the first letter. We're getting ready to close that chapter out. We've seen where Paul has just set himself out as an example that if Christ can change his life and turn him around and put him on the right path, it can happen to anybody. Paul refers to himself as the foremost of all sinners. And he really meant that in his heart, even though he probably really wasn't that, in the sense that he knew himself. He knew that was true. And then he says, if Christ can change me, he makes an example of my life, he can change anyone. We're going to pick up in verse 17. Now to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. This command I entrust to you, Timothy, my son, in accordance with the prophecies previously made concerning you, that by them you may fight the good fight, keeping faith and a good conscience, which some have rejected and suffered shipwreck in the regard of their faith. Among these are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have delivered over to Satan, so that they may be taught not to blaspheme. Paul commissions Timothy here. Some think this is almost like an ordination type of commissioning. And he tells him very clearly that, he's been prophesied over. People have spoken of what God will do in his life. And that's important that he understand that, and he takes that to heart and lives that out with a good conscience and understands that God is going to work in his life. And then Paul gives two men as examples of those who probably had that same calling and slipped into sin. This is the biggest problem that most ministers of the gospel have. They get a big head and they see a lot of people liking what they say, and it kind of goes to their ego, and their conscience becomes dull, and they start engaging in things they shouldn't engage in. Sometimes that's monetarily, sometimes that's sexually, sometimes it's just simply not being a good example and a reflection of the attributes of Jesus Christ. And even bitterness can set in when we get to that place sometimes. Paul really wants Timothy to hold on tight. You grab a hold of it, have a good conscience, and get out there and do the work of the ministry. He says, keep the faith. Those type of things that are very important. And we'll see how in his next letter he talks about that quite clearly. And he shows that to Timothy in ways that Timothy can really grab on and get a hold of it and make it applicable not only in his ministry but also in the people's lives that he's ministering to. He gives praise and honor to God before he commissions Timothy in those verses, and that one verse, verse 17, is just a psalm, a song, if I can say it that way, of praise. In fact, it's been made into songs many times. Now unto the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. That's a great way to close this session. We'll pick up there the next time.